So if y'all haven't noticed by now, I'm a huge Eeveelution fan. Obviously, I love Umbreon the most as it is my mascot, but I do have so much love for the rest of them as well. I'm also sure that you've noticed that the channel has gotten a bit of a rebrand to include Eevee and all of its evolutions into my banner and background. I just felt the channel needed a nice refresh since it had been a couple years since my last one. This all made me think, what could I do to ease everyone into the new look for the channel? And the answer was obvious. Naturally, I had to make this an Eeveelution week. That's right. This entire weekend will have nothing but Eeveelution-based videos from my fellow Eeveelution connoisseurs. And to kick it off, I'm going to be ranking all of the Eeveelutions from weakest to strongest. Now, when doing these rankings, there will definitely be a little bit of influence based on how the Eeveelutions have performed in the past, but we will be mostly focusing on how they are at this point in time. I definitely think there will be some surprises for a lot of you in this video. So that being said, let's just hop right in. So starting us off, naturally we have the weakest of the bunch. Now I know a lot of you might immediately go for Florian as the worst evolution, but in my opinion, I don't believe that to be the case. I believe Glaceon is by far the weakest of the 8 on this list. For starters, let's just talk about the ice types in general. If you watch my boy Ariza's video on figuring out which type is the worst in this series, you'll know that the ice type is the worst for a plethora of reasons. I won't go into as much detail as he did, but the main thing that's wrong with the ice types are its defenses. It only resists itself and is weak to fighting and rock, as well as some of the best types in the game being fire and steel. To add on to that, fire, steel, water, and ice all resist attacks from it, making it annoying to get some decent damage on some of the more oftenly used Pokemon. Sure, it's super effective against dragon, flying, grass, and ground, which are all nice types to be super effective against, but what good does that do when you have abysmal speed and these Pokemon often have access to moves that will obliterate any ice type in their path? Now don't get me wrong, 130 special attack isn't anything to sneeze at, and it actually has pretty solid defensive stats for an ice type. But with really bad HP and speed, the writing was already on the wall for Glaceon. As it stands right now of Sword and Shield, it has no access to hidden power. So with that being taken away from it, the only viable coverage move it has is Shadow Ball. Maybe with the DLC, we'll see a return for moves lost, but even then, I still believe Glaceon would find itself at the bottom of this list. Now moving on to the second weakest Pokemon, we have the one you were all expecting to be in Glaceon's place, Florian. Yeah, Florian might not be as bad as Glaceon, but it's still not very good either. Like Glaceon, Florian suffers from having pretty bad HP and speed, but its main problem comes from its lack of decent fire attacks. It has a phenomenal 130 in its attack stat, but the only real decent physical moves it has access to are Flare Blitz, which has recoil, Superpower, which lowers attack and defense, and Iron Tail, which has a pretty bad 75% accuracy. Now it does have a decent special attack stat, so you could trap moves like Lava Plume, Shadow Ball, or Mystical Fire, but it's just not really worth it to make it a mixed attacker. Again, that speed stat is going to be really holding it back in the long run, and I think a simple swapping of the special attack and speed stats could have made it a little bit more viable, as it does have some decent coverage. Having access to abilities like Flash Fire and Guts isn't the worst thing in the world either, but none of that is going to make Florian worth choosing over some other fire Pokemon at the end of the day. Now this next evolution is really the last one to talk about that's not particularly great, being Leafeon. Now Leafeon is definitely a step in the right direction in terms of stat distribution and coverage moves. It has 110 attack and 95 speed, which is great, with the weird decision of giving the defense stat the 130 base. I really think Leafeon could have been slightly higher tiered if you just swapped those stats a bit, like making the attack 130, the speed 110, and the defense 95. That extra 15 in speed and 20 in attack really could have made it a pretty formidable opponent. But let's talk about the other positives Leafeon has. It has access to amazing grass type moves like Leaf Blade, Solar Blade, and Seed Bomb, and decent coverage options in Iron Tail and X-Scissor. Now one thing that is also holding Leafeon back at the moment is its loss of knockoff. Sure, if you're just using it for only dark type coverage, then Bite is a decent replacement. But the reality is, knockoff is so much more useful than being a dark coverage move. Again, I have no idea if knockoff will return as a tutor move in the future, but just like with Hidden Power on Glaceon, it really only makes a slight difference. Now we're moving into the actually decent competitive evolutions, starting with Jolteon. I wish Jolteon could be a lot higher on this list. I mean, just look at how cool it is. I'd even go as far as to say Jolteon is the most popular of the original 3 evolutions. It just looks powerful, and to be quite honest, it is. I mean, look at these stats. It has 110 in special attack, 95 in special defense, and a whopping 130 in its speed stat. Even if you include forms like Speed Deoxys and Mega Alakazam, Jolteon is still tied for 14th place for highest base speed total, which is pretty crazy to think about. So that means Jolteon must be really, really good, right? Well, kind of. It definitely can do decently well, but its lack of coverage makes it less viable compared to some other Pokemon. See, Jolteon's main purpose was to hit really hard with its electric attacks, and then Volt Switch out if a major threat came by. But this kind of role was easily taken over by much better Pokemon over the years, like Rotom Wash and Tapu Koko. And since it loses a lot of its good coverage moves like Hidden Power Ice and Signal Beam, while only having access to moves like Shadow Ball and Pin Missile, Jolteon is a lot harder of a sell to use in a team. At this point in time, the only real reason I could see a person using a Jolteon on their team would be because it's their favorite Pokemon. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but I'm just saying that there are better options out there. In the upper half of this list is a major fall from grace that some of you may have seen coming, but I imagine a lot of you will be caught off guard by. It pains me to say this, but the next evolution on this list is Umbreon. Now, don't get me wrong, Umbreon is still incredibly good, all things considered, but it fell off big time once Sword and Shield were released. For a long period of time, Umbreon was considered one of, if not the best evolutions ever. Look at these stats. That's one thick freaking boy right there. 95 in HP, 110 in defense, and 130 in special defense. This thing was such an indomitable wall that people would rage quit as soon as they saw it. Umbreon was that feared in the competitive scene. So what changed, you might ask? Well, with the release of Sword and Shield came a set of changes to a lot of Pokemon to balance out the game. It appears some of these balances were to take Toxic and Heal Bell away from a lot of Pokemon, which unfortunately included Umbreon. Wish, Heal Bell, Toxic, and Protective Leftovers was a set to be feared. Stall with those bulky stats and healing capabilities while you eat away at their HP of Toxic. Take that away, and you're just a decently bulky wall. Of course, it's not a bad thing. Umbreon isn't bad by any means. But man, it's just so sad to see this once great Pokemon reduce to something you could easily no longer consider. Naturally, it hurts me extra because it's my mascot, but I can at least take solace in the fact that it's not a bottom tier Pokemon. Of all the things I want with this Pokemon DLC, I definitely say one of them is having Toxic back on Umbreon. I need to be able to annoy everyone with it again. So some of you might disagree with this placement, but above Umbreon and in the number 3 spot is the last of the OG evolutions, Vaporeon. Like Umbreon, Vaporeon has a bit of bulk on it, having 95 in special defense and that large 130 in HP. Thus far, Umbreon was the only other evolution to have a 65 in its HP stat, but Vaporeon clearly takes the whole cake with that one, with it being the highest it can be. It also got that really solid 110 special attack, which helps out a lot more than some of the others on this list. Naturally, Toxic and Heal Bell are taken away from Vaporeon too, so what exactly makes it slightly better than Umbreon? Simply put, the better move pool. While missing some crucial moves, it still maintains having moves like Shadow Ball, Surf, Muddy Water, and most importantly, Scald and Ice Beam. Ice Beam and Water Pokemon go together like peanut butter and jelly. You get all the benefits of an Ice type move without the drawbacks of being an Ice type. And then for Scald, you get a solid 80 base power with the additional bonus of having a 30% chance to burn your opponent. Over the last few months with my typing best teams, I'm sure you still heard about how good being able to get the burn off is, and it's no exception here. Now sure, Vaporeon still isn't the cream of the crop, but it adds a little bit of extra capabilities that Umbreon sadly cannot offer anymore. Again, it was really hard to actually pick between the two of them, so I'm not 100% confident in my decision. It could really go either way, but please let me know down in the comment section what you think of this Umbreon versus Vaporeon debate. Now, just shy of the number 1 spot, we have Umbreon's daytime counterpart, Espeon. Originally, Umbreon was going to have this penultimate spot, but I don't need to continue to go on about why that is. You'll get it by now. So why does Espeon deserve it? Well, first, we're going to start off at its stats. Similar to Jolteon, Espeon has a focus on its special stats and its speed, with just a bit of rearrangement. It has 110 in speed, 95 in special defense, and then that huge 130 in special attack. That's not too surprising considering how high second Pokemon special attacks are on average. And being that second type is a very strong typing in general, that bodes very well for this evolution. Next, we have its moves. In my opinion, Espeon has one of the best move pulls of any of the evolutions. As with all of them, it has access to Shadow Ball, which is really nice on a Psychic type Pokemon, but it can also dish out Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and even Grass Knot, which could come in handy in very specific situations. But it really shines with its ability choices. First is Synchronize, which will pass on Burn, Paralysis, or Poison to an opponent that gave you the status condition. This will really discourage a lot of stallers from messing with you if you have your Espeon out. It also has Magic Bounce, which will reflect any stat-changing moves thrown at it, along with being able to throw back Stealth Rocks and Spikes, which is just so incredibly useful. When you combine all of these factors together, you get yourself a great Pokemon. But its consistent goodness comes from its versatility. Want to Calm Mind and hit for a large amount of damage of stab? Go ahead. Want to go choice specs with coverage? No problem. Want to use the infamous Baton Pass and Stored Power combo? Espeon's the one. There are just so many choices with Espeon, it was going to be in the top 3 without a doubt. But as all of you know, there's one more evolution that I believe is the best of them all. And of course, that is Sylveon. Kind of easy to figure out Sylveon was on the top. I mean, it was pretty much the last one left. Of all the types that probably needed to be nerfed, the Fairy has got to be on the top of the list at this point. It came into the series about 6.5 years ago, and has shaken up the game a lot since then. With the Pokemon it could do well against, Fairy type was set for success right away, and Sylveon was not an exception to that. It has its 3 good stats spread out with 95 in its HP for decent bulk, 110 in its special attack so it can hit hard, and then the 130 in its special defense. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of that spread, but it works, so I can't say much. It has a pretty low 60 speed, which would normally be a detriment to a Pokemon like this. But it has a nice trick up its sleeve being Pixelate. Ah yes, the ability to turn any normal type move into a Fairy type move. It's absolutely beautiful. I wish all of the Eeveelutions had an ability like this for their respective types, but I digress. Like Umbreon and Vaporeon, it can take on a decent Cleric type role, but that Pixelate ability really changes the game by giving it a 90 base power stab Hyper Voice with no repercussions whatsoever. It's great. Having coverage options with Mystical Fire, Magical Leaf, Psyshock, and Shadow Ball really gives it a solid boost in the versatility category. Sylveon might be the newest member to the Eeveelution family, but it is by no means a slouch, and it's clearly shown right off the bat that it is the superior Eeveelution when it comes to strength. Well, that wraps up this Eeveelution ranking video. Honestly, it was really hard to rank these the way I did because all of them have their own benefits, but at the end of the day, some will be better than others. It's unavoidable. What did you think of all these rankings? Do you agree with me, or do you believe I overlooked something about one of them? Definitely let me know in the comments below, as I'm really curious on how you all view the Eeveelutions. I hope this was a solid kickoff to our Eeveelution weekend, and I look forward to seeing all of your reactions as we get into the next 2 videos. I think you will all be very happy, so I'm looking forward to seeing how you all like these videos. If you enjoyed the video, why not leave a like and subscribe to my channel with notifications on, that way you never miss an upload. If you want to support me further, consider following my Twitch where I stream a lot of Pokemon content and all kinds of other Nintendo content like Zelda, Fire Emblem, and much more. Also, I've been reviewing every episode of My Hero Academia Season 4 over on Mystic Sage, so head over there if you're into that too. I would love that a lot. Want to support me further and gain cool perks? Check out my Patreon. Daniel Leone, Lady Crimson, Memory Martin, The Lazy Leo, Matthew Young, Awesome Lega, Jarrett Weiss Austin, Sudden Grider, and Enigma97 did, and I want to thank them personally for going above and beyond. It means the world to me. I think I'm gonna wrap this up though. I'm Mr. Umbreon, and I will see you in the future for more awesome Pokemon content.